Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And once again, we have Jayanta with us. And those of you who are here for the first time, I urge you to please look up the first part of our conversation where he shared his journey. And also, we did get started with a precursor to this part of our conversation where he talks about how he got into being an author that he is. And so, for that, you must catch up with his journey. And believe me, it is very interesting. And uh, in his own words, he says it's not linear, and it is certainly not linear, and it's also interesting. And also, there is some conversation about Calcutta and Mumbai as well. And talking about this part, then, thank you so much for being part of Future Fast. And like we'd agreed, we'll talk about your books and why you got started as an author. You did mention it, and we had a brief view to rather you even showed those books, but all those books links are below this podcast. So all of the those of you who are interested, rather I really urge you to look them up and pick them up. And why you should, perhaps you will also get better motivated in this conversation. So 8 books you have authored so far, and the
Yeah.
first one is you talked about it, which was more of a you wrote it, rather compiled it from your own notes of teaching, and
Yeah.
there was a lack of textbook, so to speak. So that's how it became a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second one you spoke about Vibhuti Bhushan,
Mm.
the famous Bengali writer,
Mm-hmm.
and his book translated by you. Uh,
Mm.
so, and also you were mentioning that, in fact, the Bengali peers also find it very good from a point of translation, and you continue to get notes even today. That's what you're mentioning.
Yeah.
So,
But actually, I don't. I don't get notes. What I get are transfers from my publisher.
okay,
Uh, so which are more useful because then at least it's not a huge deal of money. I'm not into buying super yachts yet, but it keeps me in my masala dosa, monthly masala dosas. The royalties that I get. And
yeah,
there's one particular incident I must tell you. It's just I've never met the person, but a friend of a friend told me about it. That apparently in Bangalore there's a Bengali gentleman who read this book. This one. There she goes. Yeah, this one. He read this book, Mountain of the Moon, translation of Chadir Pahar by Vibhuti Bhushan, and he packed his wife and kiddies and took them to East Africa, went to Uganda, Kenya, wherever, to try and go to the same locations in which the stories in this book are situated. And he came back, saying that he had a wonderful time and he read this book and reading was a pleasure, which I thought was fantastic, which is good. I hope he's spoken to lots of people about it, so maybe a few more copies will get sold, and I'll be able to indulge in an extra masala dosa in the next quarter. But there you go.
sure. But what is most interesting is that you mentioned that the writer author Vibhuti Bhushan never went out of West Bengal or Bengal those days.
No, no, I'm see very specific. Kolkata to Ghatshila. Okay.
Okay, which
Now,
is
if you want to know where Ghatshila is, I'll tell you just now. I've got another screen, and I'll just tell you. Ghatshila is a town in Jharkhand where apparently it's a forested region, and Vibhuti Bhushan loved forests. Okay.
and also I think those days it was part of the Bengal region itself.
I mean, those days it was part of Bengal, but that's okay. That's the thing is that it's it is somewhere between. So it's kind of it's a little bit beyond Kharagpur, IIT Kharagpur, beyond Medinipur, IIT Kharagpur, etc. So a little bit beyond that, not too far. So it's a pretty close to Kolkata. It would take you maybe a few hours to get there. So that's his range, right? It's like going from here to let's say Pune. Bombay to Pune, maybe a little bit beyond, Bombay to Satara. That's the range. And somebody who does Bombay, Satara, Satara, Bombay, and that's about it, then sits down and decides to write a book of adventure situated in, let's say, the wilds of China. The sole Maharashtrian, I'm just making this up, okay? But let's assume if there's a
And
Maharashtrian
and what is
person who had,
commendable is somebody actually physically went and tried to retrace it, and they could kind of find it as
yeah, absolutely. You see, remember one thing, this book has, I told you that this, the Bengali original had captured the imagination of people for, it was first published in 1931 or something like that, I'm not sure, but about 100 years ago, right? Vibhuti Bhushan was dead in 1949 or 1950, so that very young. So it's almost 100 years ago the book has been published. It's been in print. I don't think it has ever been out of print. And I told you the
wow.
book I was given in 1956 when I was a 5-year-old kid. And that book, the same edition with the same cover and the same illustrations by Satyajit Ray,
Still in
woodcut,
public.
still available in exactly the same form. It has never been out of print, and that's very rare for any book.
Right.
So, in a way, one could say that there has been no adventure stories in Bengali which has been written, which is possibly even close, nowhere close to this. And Bengali is pretty rich in its literary, the quality of the output that they've had. But no adventure stories anywhere came anywhere close to this. And one of the reason why I
Interesting.
think it works and stays like this is that I'm not sure whether Vibhuti Bhushan wrote it for a child audience. And one of the things about adventure stories that most people believe, I'm writing to a demographic of 8-year-old. And that's a mistake. Vibhuti Bhushan never wrote it like that. He wanted to write the story because he felt it's a fascinating story to tell. So he cooked it up, wrote it in his usual fashion, etc. And been in ever print, been in print ever since. If he were alive, I'm pretty sure he would be drawing in, lots and lots of rupees as royalty. So
Right.
that's his greatness. That's his greatness.
And what was the next book after this? What was the third book?
Oh, actually, there were 4 others in between. I'm going in kind of sequential order.
Right.
There were 4 books in between which were on plastics. Yeah.
Okay.
So these were all commissioned by Reliance. Okay, on 4 major plastic families. So the polypropylene, polyethylene, PVC, polyvinyl chloride, and polyester.
Why
Yes.
would they engage a writer whose first book was about marketing and second book was the Bengali translation?
I'm tall, dark, and handsome. So does that suffice as an answer?
No, but it's very technical, right? In that context. Oh, of
It is
course, you are.
not. No, it
Oh,
isn't.
it's not?
I'll tell you why. It was not. It was never meant to be technical, and it isn't technical. I'll tell you the reason why. See, the gentleman who commissioned the first book, polypropylene book, he wanted somebody who could write without having to get into the technical part of it at all. It was not meant for the industry, the technical people. It was not a how-to or a compendium of technologies, nothing. Polypropylene was written to celebrate an occasion, right? 75 years before its publication, the first patent for manufacture for the process of polypropylene was created, and the 2 scientists responsible for that won the Nobel Prize. Natta from Italy and uh, I forget the gentleman's name, a German scientist. Both of them shared a Nobel Prize. Both of them had worked together on that, created the catalyst which made it possible for commercial production of polypropylene to happen. So 75 years of shall we say of that you know
Invention.
invention was being celebrated. So it was going to be distributed. It was never available in public. It was distributed to all their customers, technology partners, people like Dow Chemicals or DuPont or Mitsubishi or whoever, the technology partners, customers, vendors, etc. It was distributed them as a as a reason to celebrate a particular
Mm-hmm.
occasion.
Mm-hmm.
I just tell you one thing. This was sorry, my mistakes. 50 years before that book was published, polypropylene. 50 years before that, this invention had happened.
Invention had happened.
Yeah. So it was just that. It was a occasion to celebrate. Hmm. So there was no. It was to do how it happened. And there was a lot of history about a lot of shall we say there were apparently 18 lawsuits which had to be resolved before who got what in terms of priorities and so on and so all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is nothing to do with the technology at all, and the applications. See,
Okay.
plastics succeed because of applications, right?
Correct. Correct.
Any material succeeds because of application. Otherwise, there's a very famous case of this. You've heard of this the gentleman who invented nylon,
Mm-hmm.
a guy called Wallace Carruthers. He used to work with, I think, DuPont. I'll just tell you. Okay. Wallace Carruthers was a scientist in DuPont who is credited with having invented nylon. Okay. But he felt that he had not accomplished much because in his lifetime, nylon had not become a major industry. So he committed suicide.
Oh my.
Okay.
Okay.
After which, now you know how widespread nylon
That's
is.
such a
So he is
revolutionary.
this, yeah, he is this absolute genius who created one of the most ubiquitous material today, which we find in from bearings to all kinds of things, right?
Okay,
But
including
during his
clothing.
lifetime, and in his lifetime, it was not. He did not become a big industry, so he said that I failed, and he committed suicide. So anyway, the point is not that any material unless it becomes successful, and the reason why it becomes successful is because of applications, and but nothing else.
Correct.
Only applications, right?
Correct.
So that's why polypropylene was the first one. Then came, I think, a couple of years later, there was polyethylene, which is the other big one of the other big four. So that was to celebrate 80 years of its creation by a company which no longer exists, which is ICI.
Ah.
That's a famous British company which was later on swallowed up by Axel Nobel.
Right.
So polyethylene and the impact that it had. Again, in the process of that there were two Nobel prizes, which kind of happened, or
Right.
maybe one Nobel prize happened, but that's not the important part. Again, it became important because it
Application.
got the applications, right? Then I think the third one was, if I'm not mistaken, PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which is to celebrate the century of its invention. And then the final one was polyester, which is again I think the 80th case of polyester, which is far more recent. And polyester's impact is ubiquitous. Again, we are probably wearing things which are made out of polyester. Most people in India wear things which are made out of polyester. So that, and Teflon, your PTFE bottles, water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that these were all to create commemorations of events. So these were never sold in public. You wouldn't, because I had given them a list of the institutions where perhaps they wanted to send it, maybe they sent it, did not send it, I don't know. Some people wanted it, so I referred it back to them and send these copies to them. So that's it. So that's the reason why it was written. And the point was that it was, I'm not going to be writing technology to people know that technology is far better than me anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So it was going to be simple. It was going to be something that somebody in a, let's say, in a bachelor's degree college could read that and say, okay, I understand. Right? I'm not getting in the techniques of this process to that process, efficiency, analytical chemistry and all that stuff. I'm not doing any of that. But at least I understand the process of, in a school days, for example, in your textbook, you would have seen the Haber process of ammonia. Hmm. Right. It would be as simple as that.
Well, how easy or difficult was this exercise for you?
It was not difficult at all because I remember, see, I had a bachelor's BSc honors degree, you know, with physics, and my two subjects together with that was chemistry and maths. and I did 1 year of master's level in radio physics and astronomy. The point is not that. The point is much of that knowledge stayed. Mm. And the process by which you acquire knowledge and why does it stay with you? Because this my rationalization is that because I was interested. I'm still interested, right? One of my favorite channels on YouTube is the Royal Institution. The Royal Institution every Thursday publishes a public lecture, right? The Royal Institution is very famous. Why? Michael Faraday used to work there. Humphrey Davy used to work there. Michael Faraday, the table on which he conducted experiments in front of the public, that table is still there. And you have Nobel Prize winners, you have from all over the world, great scientists from across, not just physics, chemistry, etc. People who are dealing with, memory and consciousness and things like that. They say that they're honored to appear in the same room in which Michael Faraday used to stand and to lecture from the same table from which Michael Faraday used to lecture.
Right.
So that I still have that curiosity. I watch all of that. Do I understand much of it? Maybe 1% or 1%. But that 1% of 1%, that knowledge I've gained thanks to osmosis. That's it. I'm quite happy with that. But I'm curious to know why. What is it? Why is this happening in that fashion, this fashion, etc. So that's one of my favorite channels. I watch it certainly every week, maybe more than once a week. So it was never far away. And because I was dealing with not with technology in its depth, but technology in a surface manner where a student of history will be able to understand it. So my job was to make it interesting, which I did. So that was never was a chore. It was just fun actually.
Right. And so this four in a sequence, is it? The four books?
Yeah, kind of, more or less. Not all at one time, but between 2009 or 8 or something till about I think 2013 or 14. So
Right. And what were the other works? So that makes it six. So what are the two other works that
so the next one was a translation of this one. It's called Choronik, the Walker. This is a translation of a book by Mohanlal Gangopadhyay. This again I got as a schools those days. I don't know if it still happens, but those days schools had a habit of giving lots of presents at annual functions. So the most common present was some award of a book, right?
book?
Cheapo
Okay.
stuff, but still for general efficiency, what a proficiency, which probably meant nothing, except that I had not misbehaved during the year. So anyway, so I got this, and it has stayed with me for a very long time. The copy I finally threw, the old copy I finally discarded about 6 years ago because it was in totally tattered shape, moth eaten and all of that. But this book was fascinating because this is an interesting one. Mohanlal Gangopadhyay was related to the Tagore family. So his Abanindranath Tagore was his grandfather, and there's some linkages and all of that. But that's not the important part. The important part is that he went to London, I think, in 1936 and something like that, to study at the London School of Economics. In 1937 or 38, he decided that for summer he's not going to come back to India, but he will go on a walking tour of what was then Czechoslovakia. So this is a book about his walking journey through Czechoslovakia during that time with a
Interesting.
friend, with a Czech friend whom he had met in London, and they teamed up and then they went on a walking tour through Czechoslovakia for a month and a half. I loved that when I was a child, and I loved that when I reread it again at my college days, because when I was 30 years old, I went on my first trip to Europe as a tourist, and the big question is those days, there was a thing called the FTS, once in 3 years, the government gave you $500. It didn't give you. You could buy the
You could.
government's benign approval, $500, foreign travel assistance or foreign travel something. And for the next 3 years, that's it. You couldn't buy anything. So at $500 over 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is that I intended to spend in Europe, finding a place to stay which is seriously cheap and places to eat which are also seriously cheap is a challenge. So I remember that this book mentioned something called the youth hostels. Okay, so I went back, opened the book and read about youth hostels, and then I found out that the Youth Hostels Association in India is based out of Delhi. It used to be Janpath. I don't know where it is now. So I
Uh,
wrote to them and they
I
said,
think they used to own that building. It must be there itself.
possibly.
Right. I've
So then
been
they
there.
said,
It's a very good facility, in fact.
so for a princely sum of 125 rupees, I became a member and I got a card and a badge and so on. So I could flash it wherever I went to Europe and say, I demand admittance and bed. That was so that's how that book had always been alive in my memory. So then I decided to write this, translate this. Fortunately for me, um, the author's son and daughter were still alive. So when I told them that I've translated this and want to publish it, they were more than supportive.
He
They
was a
gave me the permission.
contemporary to Bibhuti Bhushan, right?
Oh, he's much younger,
Oh, younger. Okay.
much younger. But his children, I think the son passed away a couple of years ago. The daughter is I spoke to 2 or 3 months ago. Very much older than me, not much. Some years older than me, but they're very supportive. All the illustrations within the book they gave from their personal collections. So they were actually pretty thrilled that somebody is going to write the dad's work in English. So that I thought I was very touched about that. So
Oh, he's not a famous author in Bengali or anything.
oh, he is, but for a different reason. See, he wrote this book is again all been out of has never been out of print. Right?
This is a
This
travel
child,
log, but
the Travel of Choronik, has never been out of print again. It
interesting.
was first published whenever it was published. In fact, curiously, the lady he married, the author Mohanlal, he married a lady from Czechoslovakia. Okay, her name was Milada, and she used to teach us in school when I was
Oh,
a kid. Right. I do not remember her having taken a class in which I was there, but she used to teach, 5 years old, 6 year olds. So even if I was in the class now, I don't remember. But she used to teach in her school. So that was another connection. It was pretty fascinating. So that book has never been out of print. It still is in print. You can still buy the Bengali edition. But he became famous for another reason. There's a book called, the uh, Veranda on the South, Dokina Veranda on the South. When Mohanlal was a child, he used to spend his time with two grandfathers. Both were great painters, Abanindranath Tagore and Gaganendranath Tagore. So in their ways, they were great painters of the postmodern Bengali school. Both were, I think, nephews of Rabindranath Tagore, and both used to live in rooms on the same floor, and they refused to get out of the rooms even to go into the garden. So Mohanlal wrote this book, which is still again an absolute classic about his memories of his two grandfathers.
so,
So that's been a bestseller ever since.
but how is it that you picked these books? Is it because they caught your imagination very early in
Of
life?
course,
You had it, and that is the only reason.
I guess so. Because see, there are many things which capture the imagination. The fact that you can still enjoy them 50 years later, that's rare. That's not very common. I mean, the one author who has always captured my imagination since the time I first read him when I was 10 years old, besides them, was P.G. Woodhouse. I still absolutely love P.G. Woodhouse. As a friend of mine in Delhi, who's another Woodhouse freak, so most of our conversation is very Woodhousean.
Excellent.
But that's the way it is. if somebody is able to capture and retain that, that, you know, share of mind for such a long period of time, the man's a genius. Yeah, we quote Shakespeare all this time for what reason?
Good.
In all our conversations, there will something from Shakespeare will always appear. Why? Because he's captured the imagination, he's retained it for 500 years. He's retained it, so it's not uh, given the dues.
Totally. Can't can't disagree on that at all. So, what's the last published work of yours?
Last published work came out, I think, 2 years ago, 2021. Yeah, which is this, which is not published as under my authorship. Authorship is a gentleman called Kanakasabhapati Pandian, and I'm one of the contributors. This is by choice because, see, this is a book which actually began life in 1971. 1971 is the year in which Bangladesh was born.
Correct.
So, if you remember, the title is Birth of Bangladesh.
Right.
Birth of Bangladesh, Eyewitness Memories. So, let me explain this to you. Because Bangladesh was born on the 16th of December 1971. And at that time, you may recall that, Bangladesh and the Pakistani forces in India were
Eastern
at war.
Pakistan. Yeah.
Eastern Pakistan. East Pakistan. So there was a war going on over there, and we were very clearly fighting with the Mukti Bahini, the independence forces of Bangladesh, for the liberation of Bangladesh. And we were in IIM Kolkata in campus. So from time to time, we would see, dogfights going on between the Pakistan Air Force and the Indian Air Force and all of that. And we used to follow the news, in the common room. The only thing that worked was a radio. So radio was always on full blast. So we also had, at the end of each corridor, we had a blackboard where scores used to be kept. So it was obviously on all of us were 19, 20 or something like that. So all of us, excitement was huge, not just for people from Bengal, but from everybody. Everybody was there. Student population of roughly, let's say, 160, 170. So everybody was hugely involved, engaged, and excited in that. So 16 December, I think the Bangladesh got created. I'll just confirm this to you just 1 second. 16 December, because that was not officially the creation of Bangladesh. That's held to be March. But what happened was 16 December, the Pakistani army in Bangladesh surrendered. General Niazi surrendered to General Arora, and Bangladesh was free. Four of our friends and batchmates, 17th early morning, they vanished. They had woken up early in the morning. Each of them carried a small thela, little cloth bag with some clothing and underwear, change, toothpaste, toothbrush, and maybe 50, 60, 100 rupees in cash with them. And they left the hostel early morning to get train to the Bangladesh border and walked across. The idea was to go to Dhaka and come back, and which they did. They went to Dhaka, came back, and 7 days later they were back in the hostel. Extremely nonchalance, because very few people knew that they had actually gone, and even fewer people knew where they had gone. And they came back 7 days later in time for breakfast, and everybody asked, "Hey, कहाँ थे रे? ऐसा बाहर गए थे, किधर गए थे? वो ढाका घूम गया." So that's what happened. So 50 years later, 2021, we used to have this. We have this our batch
Get
WhatsApp
together.
group. Yeah, WhatsApp group,
Oh,
Zoom.
okay.
Yeah. So on this conversation, somebody said, "Why the hell don't you turn all this stuff, all your experiences into a book?" And so they said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." So I was appointed the not the author, but I was appointed the project manager, because I knew what it is to write a book. So I've written 7 before this, right? So they said, "This fellow knows," and so I was given the whip, and so I could spank them on their backsides when they felt slow. And through a series of about 10 or 12 Zoom conversations between me and these other friends, all the everything that was in their mind, whatever they could remember, they put on record just like this. There were nothing. There were no photographs. Those days, very few people could afford a camera.
Correct.
And if somebody's dad had a camera, he was damned he was going to do it. He's Leica or a Nikon or a Canon to his son to take over to Bangladesh. See, cheap point and shoot cameras had not been invented then. All the very expensive SLRs are the very expensive, even more expensive, these Leicas. Nobody had a camera. Um, there were some papers that they had collected in Dhaka. All of them were, when they were on the way back, all of them had been lost. So there was nothing. Everything was whatever they remembered was all the material there was. So we put all that on the Zoom conversations. We had them transcribed. Actually, spent quite a fortune on getting them transcribed. And after the transcription, then we could write them down into text. And Ms. Pandian, who's the named as the author, we said that we can't be asking the publisher to share royalties 5 days. So you take the money, and then we figure out what to do. In the process, two of the friends who had actually gone to Dhaka, we lost them. One of them passed away some years ago. The other one passed away while the book was being written. So anyway, the book got published. I think in 20 book got published in 21, not in December, but a bit later, perhaps in March 22, 2022. And it's still in print, and we are still, this is the additional samosa we get every month. This actually got a lot of interesting responses because, there's people who have been in the army who have served in that war. Quite a few of them actually came forward. They read the book and they said that we will talk about it at various forums. And there was one gentleman, Colonel, Venkataraman, I think, who actually has talked about this in various forums in Chennai. Somebody else has done that in Delhi. And because to them, this was authentic. The fact that, a bunch of 20-year-olds didn't tell anybody, least of all the directors,
Right.
and just vanished into the wild blue yonder, came back after 7 days in Dhaka, and where they encountered the Indian army, were very supportive. They also encountered a couple of Rajakars who might have killed them, and nobody would have known any better. So all those things happened, and they came back safe and sound. And so this was fascinating. So it's still in getting sold bits and pieces, and I have written a Bengali version of this.
Okay.
So it's now with the publishers. Hopefully, they'll turn around and say, yes, we will publish it, and we shall see.
Okay, so that's the work in progress. What else is in your
No, the
stable?
Bengali one is a work in progress. The English one is done, kind of dusty.
Right, right. So what else are you working on in terms of your book project?
At this point in time, there are two things that I have started work on. So as and when as when I get closer to completion,
Finishing,
I
then you
think
want
that's
to talk.
we'll talk about that. Yeah.
So what are the things that
Unless of
keeps
course
you
there are
busy still?
publishers. One second. Unless of course you've got publishers among your readers who might say, yes, I'm ready to do it, then I will talk. But it's unlikely that it's much better to complete something and then
Correct.
yeah.
So what are the other things that keeps you busy?
At this point in time, I actually teach a bit. I teach at St. Xavier's in Bombay. I teach for about 4 or 5 months a year. And the rest of the time, I travel for about 2.5 months in a year. And I am in the process of completing one project which has been going on for 10 years, which is a project which is that, I had about 2,200 cassettes,
Yes, I am.
Mm. So 2,200 of them. So I promised myself that someday I will digitize a lot. Mm.
So what's in that? What's in those cases?
Music stuff
Your
which
own music?
no, not my own, but the stuff which possibly no. Some stuff I had recorded, some stuff not available anymore. For example, there's an album here called Sarah Vaughan, singing live. So it is not available anymore, and so I'm now down to my last eight. So when I'm done with that eight, then the project complete. Then we'll think about something else to do.
You mean you digitize them and you publish them online?
No, 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 no. It is a private collection. I can't publish them online. This is not my property.
Right, it's all
This
copyright. Okay.
is not copyright. Becomes I don't want to get into that because somebody, Sarah Vaughan has been dead and gone for years. Yeah, but the recording, the label owns a copyright. She might, estate will have a copyright. So private collection. So
Correct.
the problem is nobody makes cassette decks anymore.
Right.
So
So
what do you
what
do
kind
with
of
them?
books do you read now?
I read quite a wide variety. I am I tend to read more fiction than anything else. Okay, and I don't necessarily read the. Okay, let me tell you. For example, uh, my favorite, one of my favorite genres is crime. Hmm. And I've just got a post from somebody else on my other screen about a book by a guy called Keigo Higashino. Keigo Higashino. You're in Bangalore, right?
Right.
If you go to Blossoms, you probably find everything by Higashino at Blossoms. Okay.
Should.
He's a Japanese crime story writer, and somebody
Right.
just recommended to me of a book by him called The Devotion of Suspect X.
Okay.
Now, Higashino is to me a phenomenal, absolutely great writer. So there's people like this. I've read, been reading from before Sherlock Holmes and my favorite writer in that genre is probably after is a guy, French writer, Belgian, called Georges Simenon, who were the most compassionate detective ever created. A guy called Inspector Maigret.
Right.
And I
There is a
read,
series also on BBC.
yeah, yeah. There used to be the Michael Gambon used to be Maigret. Then
Right.
Rowan Atkinson, I think, did Maigret
Atkinson is
for,
in the BBC, the new
yeah.
series.
Then another genre I love very much is science fiction. And there's a absolutely phenomenal Chinese writer whose name I can't pronounce, but I'll try. His name is Xin Liu, Cixinliu, Xin Liu.
Oh, I think he worked for Microsoft before he became an author, right? It's the
May
same
well
guy.
be, may well be. He's
Microsoft and Google, I think, couple of these software companies. I think.
possible because that his level of science is phenomenal. Because see, the book is called whole series is called the three body problem. Now
Hmm.
you need to be a scientist to figure out that the three body problem is one of those things which doesn't have a solution. He then worked as a computer engineer at a power plant in Shanxi. He doesn't say anything about his working in Google. May well have, but so that's the kind of stuff I like reading. And anybody who decides to write something which is a little kind of offbeat. So I don't like reading Harare, but I like reading, Jared. What's his name? Is the guy who wrote Guns, Steel, Guns, Germs, and Steel. Jared Diamond.
Uh,
So
so, if you can recommend some books and podcasts to our listeners and audience, what would they be?
So I just told you the books that I really
You
enjoyed in
read,
recent
right?
times. You see, the list of recommendations can be very long. I'll tell you why.
Do you follow
So
podcasts as well?
not really. I don't follow podcasts. Off and on, I watch a few, but it's never. This is not like I follow the way I would follow, let's say, the lecture series at the Royal Institution.
Right.
It's not. It's not like that.
So probably that can be a good recommendation as well, right?
Oh, but of course, if you are interested in that kind of thing, there are many others. There's a Perimeter Institute of Theoretical Physics.
Mhm.
So they have a series of lectures, public lectures by great scientists. You have to make the effort to understand it, so they don't get into formula. They don't get into any of that. So this whole saying, no, you put a formula in a book, right? All your sales will go down by about 90%, except in a textbook. So similarly, you put a formula on a slide in a lecture, all your audience will run away and they'll hurt themselves escaping through the door. So,
Right.
mhm. So anyway, these are things, and if you want, I can send you a list if you want to use that list.
Sure.
But
We'll share
it's
it with
not.
the audience. Yeah.
So I find that fascinating because somebody has taken the trouble of the pains of looking at the world through some distorting lenses. That's important.
True. Very true. Well, do you want to share any tips for those who want to be an author?
I don't know whether these tips work. I mean, I was told that you should always write with the help with the book, always engage a book agent to help you write, to market your books. So I've spoken to a couple of agents and they read some of my stuff and said this will never sell. So obviously the idea of writing books to sell is I'm probably bad at it. But you know they I'm not too sure whether I can give any advice except saying that unless you're really enjoying what you're doing is a waste. You're wasting your time. If you there's a choice, if you approach it like array, I've got to write this 1,000 words tomorrow. Sometimes it works, huh? But if Woodhouse, for example, had a excellent discipline about him.
Uh, yeah, most people say that, right? That you
Yeah, yeah.
need to just write.
No,
So,
he in his book called Performing Flea, which is a series of letters between him and a friend called Townshend. He had actually put down his how he writes. Okay, so I'm not going through all of that but he was a strange guy. He wrote
no, but he
70,
was
80
also very
books. Yeah,
prolific, right? I mean,
exactly. And his standards were always very high.
mm,
Except towards the end of his life, okay, maybe one or two books were not as good as ones in the past. But otherwise, his standards were always very high. How the hell did he manage it? So he was very prolific. He was very disciplined. His craft was of really, really outstanding thing. But I'm assuming that most of the people who are watching this, I certainly am not a Woodhouse, and I'm also making the assumption, unfair though it be, that many of whoever's watching this are not Woodhouses. They're part-time writers, part-time, trying their hand at writing something or the other. I don't know what advice I can give them except for the fact that you know, you must enjoy what you're doing because if you're not, I mean, it's like having a child when you're forcing yourself and your wife to have a baby when none of you enjoy sex. And that's one hell of a weird way. So don't do that. So write about things which you enjoy, and maybe someday somebody will say, okay, fine, I like it well enough to publish it. Not a very, shall we say, business-like approach towards writing, but that's all I can do.
sure. Thanks. Yeah, I guess that always keeps hovering around, right? Most people tend to look up research, and most times I think people just need some amount of reassurance that okay, keep doing and you'll get to it.
Yeah, you see,
So,
need to reassurance is fine. That's good. That happens. There have been a couple of people who are younger than me from not batchmates but alumni from IMCAL who have been sending their unpublished work to me asking for comments and so on. So to the best of that I can, I give them advice. Whether they follow it or not, I don't know. But they will need that. Sometimes people do need that conversation. But there are
I, I, for,
only
I forget this author's name. He was a I think only one book I heard is I lately I listened to books, uh, audiobooks.
audible, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh.
so my reading is limited to what is not on audio.
Okay.
So this book I listened to was his biography, and it is I think it's Stephen Zweig, if I'm getting it right. Stephen
Stephen
Zweig. He's a German writer.
Stefan Zweig.
Zweig.
Stefan Zweig. Yeah.
Stefan Zweig, right. So,
Mm,
German writer born in Austria, identified
mm,
himself as an Austrian, but
mm,
of course made to leave Germany, Austria during the Hitler's time, and
mm,
very oddly, he even committed suicide with his second wife.
mm,
They
mm,
both
mm.
committed suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think in this biography, he says that his work he would write 1,000 pages,
Mm,
and he would edit it himself before sending it out to any editor to bring it down to maximum 300 to 350 pages. So he would literally chop it down to one third of it.
mm,
And also, he would want to make sure that no word or a letter also should be there if it is not useful.
mhm, mhm,
So he says that his discipline is that he does not want to waste his reader's time. So everything that is published has to be useful.
mm.
So he would actually do that.
Yeah, fair enough. So different people will have different approaches. So from Woodhouse's point of view, for instance, um, he was wasting people's time because he wanted them to have fun. Having fun, in a way, perspective, is a wasting time. But for him, because he was writing for fun, he never had a greater purpose in life. Never said, "I want to change the way people look at life." Now that shit. I want whoever's reading it must have a good time. That's it.
Right, right.
So what he wrote in his performing flea was that he approached each book as a series of scenes, like in a play or in a cinema. Okay,
Yeah, I
and the
think
scene.
that's why it became so uh, funny because when you're reading, you actually visualize the
Absolutely. And he
and
said that no, don't waste time between scenes. Yeah, oh yeah, khada, go to the next one. So you look at a Woodhouse, Bertie Wooster books, 1.5 to 2 days. That's all. London में चालू हो गया, then cut to country. Second day post lunch or post dinner, Bertie Wooster runs away, who Jeeves joins. So 1.5 days, 2 days max, story complete. So pack in everything, cut to scene after scene after scene after scene. No, ruminations, no thinking about nothing. That's the way stories are. That's the reason they work. I can't say that if Stefan Zweig had taken that approach, he would have been able to write anything worth a damn. So, hey, so it's not. There's no standard thing,
so
except there's only what is it you can do to keep catch hold of a reader by the collar, and then he submits himself to be held by the collar for 300 pages. And some people, great authors, are fantastic at that. No? I
correct.
remember when I first read Camus' The Stranger. The Penguin edition was called The Outsider, not Outsider Stranger, something. Anyway, sorry, The Plague. Yeah. I was in the middle of my BSc final year, third year final exams. So I got the book, I think 2 days before the exam paper. So I had a big thick book called Atomic Physics, which is really this thick. So I hid the Camus with inside that. Okay? And I sat up 2 nights and read it cover to cover. I passed. I did very well in the exam. No problem. I did very well because I probably I studied that before. But before the exam, this book just grabbed me by the collar and said, "Bastard, you cannot pay attention to anything else." That was Camus.
Right.
So
Well,
if you have that capability, you don't need.
Yeah, yeah, I guess uh, uh, well, that's a very different style of writing, and it has to
Yeah,
be so strong in one's
sure.
perspective that it can get transferred to no matter any translation work also will be as good.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
No,
so
absolutely. Ultimately the thing is that can I keep the audience engaged, reader engaged? A person like Conan Doyle would do it differently. Woodhouse would do it differently. Higashino does it differently. Samo did it differently. Well, possibly the greatest storyteller of all time was Amara Mahabharat. Right. They, I mean, the whole bunch of people must have
so many
sat down,
efforts.
hundreds of them. So, but all of them have done it different. So I still read it once a year.
And which version do you read?
I have two versions, one in Bengali and Ramesh Menon's version in English, published by Rupa.
And
I
Bengali
read this.
version by?
Uh, Bengali version by a guy called Rajshekhar Basu.
Okay. So, I as a closure to this edition, I was just thinking if you've been a writer, author, you continue to do that, and you also uh, consume a lot of content, right? I think both
Mm-hmm.
in print and digitally.
I
So,
usually, as an author, as a writer, forget author, as a writer, the word content I find very irritating. And there is a reason why. A porn star actress is also creating content. Hmm. Shakespeare is also creating content. There will be something in common in, in there, right? So, well, as a personal,
see, you do read a lot of books, but how do you
uh,
refer to those talks that you listen to? I thought it would be easy to refer to them as digital content. So, in that context, because of course, if there were podcasts made for digital consumption, then it would have been podcasts, but they are actually talks and
no,
recording
I refer to them as lectures. I heard
lectures.
a lecture at Royal Institution, yeah. The old words still work, right?
Okay, yeah, labels, yes, but you are an ad man. You people tend to create these labels that most people.
But then remember one thing, because I'm an ad man, I'm sensitive to the value of a label. When a
Uh,
label is because of its width of the bag is so large, you can cram everything under the sun into it, then that label has no
Unfortunately,
meaning.
true.
The label has no
Unfortunately,
meaning. Beethoven is also created content, right? Right? TM Krishna
absolutely.
creates content. No, bullshit. That doesn't work.
Well, TM Krishna has very strong following as well. But yeah,
Yeah, of course, of course. I
yeah.
love TM Krishna because not that I understand anything of classical music and so on, but I love his attitude and I love his singing. So
Oh, I mean, of course, he is also known by many people more for his political views than his music.
that's
Yeah,
good. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
perfect. So, as a closure to this part of the podcast, I just wanted to, uh, how do you see these whole? I wanted to ask you content, but now that you say you don't like it from the term, but how do you see the evolution of this process? Because see, to be very honest, I my consumption of books has gone up multifold because I listen to them now.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
the times I used to read, my number of books was really low. A best
Mm.
year would have had about 10, 12 books. But today I almost consume more than 20, sometimes 30 books in a year. So
Mm.
that way I'm happy, but some people have very strong reservations about it. So, but what do you think? I think today I even urge every writer I meet is when is your audible version or audio version coming, because it just makes it that much more easier.
No, see, that, I think you hit the nail on the head. That much more easier. See, because we've been used to a printed form since, let's say, the 15th century, 16th century.
Yeah, around 15th
Mm,
century. Yes. Yeah.
since
Late
Gutenberg came
15th.
up with
It
the
started with Bible, but by 16th
ah,
century it was
yeah,
everything.
yeah. So because we've been used to that form since that time, doesn't mean that something else can't complement it and maybe ultimately replace it. We will absorb if it is worth reading in some form or listening to it in some form and being moved by it and being inspired by it, whatever, right? Then it will stay. If it isn't, it'll die. The form won't, to use your word, the content will.
True.
Okay. So
True.
that it depends upon the author or the
The
creator
creator.
of the content. So, right?
Okay, now that you said that, what do you think now? Uh, Quite a few people who are into content writing
Uh-huh.
as a profession
Uh-huh.
are finding themselves jobless. There have been multiple articles in Indian media and international media also that AI has replaced a lot of these people. So, in fact,
Sure.
this very low cost subscription fee gives you an option to, I mean, it actually authors at least the blogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who published a book where he is co-authored with the AI, right? Including generating images that are used in the book were
Mm-hmm.
generated out of AI. So how do you
Okay.
see that happening, revolving? How do you
Uh,
see that impact?
I don't know. I mean, if you didn't have a original strong idea to begin with, maybe it deserved to die. Why I'm saying this is as follows. I teach a course in not in advertising, copywriting, whatever, but in the marketing communication. The stages before you start putting pen on paper and writing ideas. If I look at a bunch of ads and I've analyzed this with the students, and this is the quality of the script you're going to give me, I'm better off going to the chat GPT and asking them to write. So you must have an idea which is strong enough. Okay. Give an example. For example, one of my absolute favorite ads was this old ad by Feviquick, where this fellow, suited, booted kind of, is going to catch fish.
Fish. So,
And this Mallu fellow comes in and allows, one stick, four double. Now that maybe I can ChatGPT can do it, but I don't think so. There's a strong enough idea in demonstrating something which is improbable. And the contrast between these two characters, one Mallu fellow going, yeah, 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 singing in joy at the fact that he's caught fish by four dabs of glue, and this other prim and proper guy who's looked down on the Mallu chap, they be sitting there all fucking afternoon doing nothing, catching nothing.
right.
So, maybe ChatGPT will have the same idea. I tend to doubt. See, if I want
So
today,
you being a writer, you don't think it's a threat. Rather, you think it's good and it only benefits those who are more creative
if
rather than.
exactly if I can always hide under saying something, it is a threat and therefore I'm dead, save me. Or you can say that what is it that I can do with it? Your friend wrote a book partnering ChatGPT or some Gen AI thing. Musicians are working in the same ways as well, right?
Correct.
So if it's not going to be able to add value, if you're not using that as a tool to add value to what you're doing, then it will always be a threat.
Correct.
So what is it that you've got which is a strong enough idea where this can actually add value? If you can't, I'll go to ChatGPT and say, give me a script tag. It'll cost me nothing.
Correct.
You look at any. I mean, let me extend this a bit to an extreme case where I find that if the Hollywood scriptwriter, Hollywood, not Bollywood, if Hollywood scriptwriters were to go on strike tomorrow, I would say let them go on strike. If I look at Hollywood films, 19 out of 20 films are comics. Hmm. DC and what is the Marvel? Okay,
Right.
The only talent you need in those kind of films are in the CGI group. You don't need actors. The last thing you want are actors. You see, the actor will have an idea about the characterization, character development. You don't want any of that stuff, right? You want hunks. Sure, hunk. Cast five hunks, you're done. Hunks don't need to act. Hunks can act, you're worse. The hunks will say, I want an extra take. Yeah, bullshit, you're going to get an extra take. Fuck off. Okay, so you need only CGI are the only talent. You don't need script writers. Okay, the CGI, the way it happens will be a script. You don't need DOPs. You need one camera fellow to sit around and taking pot shots or something. Finally, it edit it down. So you need a good editor, and need the CGI and some fellow who's doing some number into calling it music. That's all that you need. All right. But Christopher Nolan can't work like that. Right. Now, who would you rather watch, Christopher Nolan or Protectors of the Galaxy or Guardians of the Galaxy or Guardians or whatever they are, Guardians of?
Well, they do have a huge following, and they also make a lot of money. So
That's all
it,
right. So that's it. They will make money. But I'm saying script writers as a breed for that kind of films are dead, and thankfully so. I don't need script writers for doing that.
right,
Yeah. But for a Nolan kind of a film, you need a script writer, and that's Nolan and his wife and his brother themselves.
correct.
Because those films are based on ideas, and those ideas are you know, something like a Tenet is a wild idea.
Oh, have you read his biography?
No.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. In fact, it talks a whole lot about how we approaches writing a film and
Mm.
also making a film,
Sure. Mm.
uh, and in fact, this writer, I don't remember his name. So he is he's a journalist who's interviewed him from the past, and so he shares in the course he shares his own journey with Nolan of
Mm.
making different movies.
Mm.
So that's a very interesting. Since you talked about him, I think you will probably like his biography as well.
No, I'll make it a point. I did not know he had a biography out, but I'll definitely want to do that. So
I'll send you the the
this is
link.
precisely the point. You see, if you have an idea, CGI can add to it. Sometimes in in Tenet, he decided not to use the CGI to blow up the Boeing. He decides cheaper to actually buy a old 747 and blow it up. It's far more realistic and it answers cheaper. You see, this is the point. No? Tenet, as you've seen Tenet, right? There are sequences which actually run back, in one direction, one way. Next time in
Correct,
edited, it runs in the other direction. You can't do that without an absolute master DOP.
correct, correct. And
Hmm.
not
So,
just that. In fact, that the space movie that he made, uh,
the क्या नाम है?
Intergalactic.
हाँ, yeah.
So he got a whole set done. He
Hmm.
designed, got the whole product designed,
Hmm.
and it was probably much easier to do it with the computer graphics. But he stuck to his guns, and
Yeah. Yeah. So there are some weirdos like that. There is Hans Zimmer is another weirdo. Zimmer does not work with digital technology. He still works with tape.
well, he was his music for most of his movies, right? Till
Yeah.
the last one. Last one was not him.
Last one was a Norwegian young Swedish guy.
Yeah, Oppenheimer. For Oppenheimer, it was
Oppenheimer.
not him.
Hmm.
Yeah,
See, this is exactly what I'm saying. If you have a strong idea, then you choose the right tool. If CGI, if this AI happens to be the right tool, then good. If it doesn't, bad luck. See, you look at all these ads for there's something called Centrum.
mm,
I haven't seen them on TV, but I see them pretty often on some OTT and some YouTube. Centrum is a multivitamin additive. It's like Bicosouls, etc. Right? Now, Centrum, I don't need a scriptwriter at all. You watch a Centrum ad, you'll find, say, Anushka Sharma, I need her for 5 stills. So I can shoot her for an hour. That's it. I'll pay for an hour worth of her time or whatever it is. Oh yeah. The rest of it she ends with a gesture like this, right? The gesture when you open this up, then all the Centrum products come up in front. All those are post prod, right? So every 90% of the footage is post prod.
Correct.
I need her for an hour in studio to shoot 5 stills because any movement in between I can manufacture on average. Sometimes. But if that's the idea you're trying to sell me and putting a price on your time and your talent, but you don't have any talent, and I'm not paying you anything. It's cheaper for me to do this way. No?
Right. But I think, yeah, I guess we will have more AI collaborative work. So, would you mind?
It
Will you pick up and read a book other than the novelty for the first book? Will it be
yeah,
motivating
I
for you?
will.
You will?
I
Okay.
will, I will. Because my worry about AI is not to do with the death of copywriters, etc. That's not nothing to do. My worry about AI is to do with the death of authenticity in news.
Right. Wonderful.
Yeah,
And
again,
you don't think AI will kill copywriters?
if copywriters are lousy
Mediocres
copywriters,
will
you know,
not survive. But
let them do, sell whatever, go to work at McDonald's or whatever else they need to do. Or become better copywriters.
right, right.
But
Wonderful.
to me,
Yep.
the worry is about authenticity in news. Deep fake, I can now manufacture deep fake. If you have a really powerful phone, I can do that on the phone. I can have you. I can do a video capture of the screen of you, and I can have you spewing, anti-Israeli this thing,
Yeah.
or
Right.
anti-Palestine this thing, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Kill Biden. I'll do that.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. There are actually tools available to do it now.
Oh yeah, tools
Right.
have been available for a while, except that the now prices are much cheaper,
Correct. Correct.
and I can do it on a reasonably high-end phone. Previously, I needed a reasonably high-end laptop. I don't need that.
Correct. It's become much affordable now. True.
So,
Right. And also, it's become less technology in understanding required to use those tools. So it's become
yeah,
few clicks. So pretty much you don't just need any programming or computing skills to do it.
absolutely not. I mean, if I knew how to do it, in a few minutes, you'll be up on YouTube claiming responsibility for attempting to blow up the Lok Sabha. There you go.
Actually did that, right? Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jayant, and to the audience and listeners. I hope you enjoyed this, and please do share this with all those you think will enjoy this, and do subscribe to Future Fast if you have not yet subscribed to Future Fast. And lastly, do come back again because we're going to catch up with him to hear his perspective on future on various things. So till then, thank you so much and enjoy the ride. Jayanta, once again, thank you so much for being part of
Not
Future
at all.
Fast.
Not at all. Most welcome. I enjoyed it.